Mpumalanga, 60 kilometers west of the Durban metro, was one of the flashpoints of political violence in the 80s and the 90s. It started as clashes between the United Democratic Front, the internal wing of the ANC, and the then Inkatha, which became the Inkatha Freedom Party later. About 2,000 people lost their lives in the area. No-go zones were established, and many families were displaced. An emotional 70-year-old Konzeni Mpulo remembers those days like yesterday. She said they had to move in groups to get to work safely. At the time, children had to drop out of school if their schools were in an area controlled by a rival political grouping. She says she witnessed her son's killing by ANC supporters. He was shot several times before being hacked and set alight. She says her family had to leave the area after their homes were destroyed. Mpulo says the political divisions of the past are gone, but she says survivors have been forgotten by those in positions of power.
After everything that has been done, we have not once received counseling or have social workers come. It's all the same. We forget and be triggered by the slightest of things. But because we're still alive, we still have the emotional trauma that lives with us. As you hear with your machines, not one of those high positions officials care about what happened to war survivors just to see how they're holding up.
Adelaide Nxumalo and her nephew were the only survivors after an IFP attack in which 11 of her family members were killed. She says she bears no grudges as it was a war zone back then.
As I'm saying, my family was killed in the war between the ANC and IFP. They were killed by the IFP. All I can say is that Umntwana must rest in peace. Death is not a joyous thing, but what I am happy about, he died because he was sick and not killed by someone.
Another survivor, Sabo Komo, who lost 16 family members in an ambush, says emotions were high at the time. He recalls leaders like Prince Buthelezi calling for peace among party supporters at grassroots level. He said there would have been less bloodshed if people had heeded those calls.
Houses closed down. This place was a no-go area. It was difficult. Right now, we're living in peace and people are free to go anywhere. Mtwana Wakwa Pindangane used to preach peace and that we should talk things through even though we want freedom, but we should not fight and solve things with violence.
Mtutuzi Kumete, who was injured in one of the attacks, says they now live with their political rivals in peace and treat them like their own family.
Right now we are living in peace with Inkatha. We treat each other as brothers and sisters. The only thing that we are having now is crime violence that is scaring people.
Some IFP supporters say they would also like a memorial plaque to be erected for victims of the violence in their area, as was done for the ANC victims of the 1995 massacre at Shobashobane in the south of the province. I'm Nonhlakani Pomakwaza for SABC News in Mpumalanga Township.